I don't know if you guys heard the news, but there was a bit of a debate over on JRE, the Joe Rogan Experience, between Douglas Murray and Dave Smith, an English major who writes books and talks about geopolitics, versus a funny guy? Huh? What could possibly go wrong? Let's listen and learn.
Joe Rogan Podcast, check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night.
Fent by day, Joe Rogan by night.
All day.
All day, baby.
All right, we're up. Ladies and gentlemen, good to see you guys. What's happening? Are you going no headphones?
Hello, Joe. It's me, Douglas.
Oh,
Keep the do.
I'll do that. I'm not quite sure what they add, but yeah. Okay.
There we go. All right. The goal of this is every time I see people that disagree with anything that's happening, any gigantic world events, it's one of these retarded shows where they're screaming. There's the word again. We brought it.
Yeah.
We were just talking about
You
that.
did it early.
The word retarded is back.
We're so back, baby. The woke mind virus has been destroyed. You can say the R word now. You can say retarded.
And it's one of the great culture victories that I think is spurred on probably by podcasts. But
Guys, Joe Rogan says it so we can say it.
these things are always like Pierce Morgan-y, which is fine, you know, where everyone's screaming over each other and, you know, it's
Just give me the F word back, please.
5 different people talking over each other. There's never just rational conversations where you discuss things, and I respect both of you. I think both of you are brilliant, and I bet you agree on a lot of things, and I bet you disagree on a lot of things, and it'd be fascinating to see your perspectives on these things. So that's why you're here together.
Okay.
And
Well,
Douglas,
Can I ask you something?
yes, sir.
Since the war in Israel began, and since the war in Ukraine began, you've had quite a lot of people who are very against both in different ways.
Yes.
Do you think you've had enough people on who are supportive of either?
When was the last time I laughed about a joke from Dave Smith? I didn't even know who this comedy assassin was.
war?
I don't know that word enough, if that's...
Personally, I avoid watching comedians because they make me less funny.
good word.
Let's say enough people who are on the side of Israel instead of wild critics of Israel.
Well, I've had a few. I mean, I believe God Sad is
Hey, Joe, how many Zionists have you had on your pod?
on the side of Israel.
For sure.
Jordan is on the side of Israel.
You had Mike Baker, Coleman
yeah.
Hughes.
Listen here, buddy. I'm not just on the side of Israel. Me and my daughter Michaela ride or die for that shit. Employed by the Daily Wire, follow the money.
Yeah. I've had,
Coleman did it for like 20 minutes, so it wasn't why he was here.
no, I mean, none of them. And none of them is why they're here. You know, it's a good question.
Do you think you've tilted one way?
Me personally,
No, just with the guests you've had.
the guess, yeah, probably more tilted towards the idea that perhaps the way they've done it is barbaric.
But why do you think that is? Just out
Israel gave us Gal Gadot. I'm on their side. Just chat. Some absolute milk trucks is all I'm saying.
of interest. I'm just interested in your selection of guests because you're like the world's number one podcast. So.
Yeah, it's not.
Joe, you're literally the arbiter of truth. I'm going to hold you to the standard.
I don't think about it that way. I just think I'd like to talk to this person.
But can I just?
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
it's your show. But
sure.
If you're going to interview
Can I just give me 1 sec? Joe, can I speak now?
historians of the conflict or historians in general, why would you get somebody like Ian Carroll or?
Yeah, but he ain't.
Ian Carroll, that is preposterous. Ian Carroll's a true schizo. He's a level of schizo I don't even think I'm willing to participate in.
Carroll, I didn't bring him on for that purpose. I brought him on because I want to find out, like, how does one get involved in the whole conspiracy theory business? Because his whole thing is just conspiracies.
Sure.
You know?
But do you have any? There's been a tilt in the conversation, in both conversations, in the last couple of years, and it's largely to do with people who have appointed themselves experts, who are not experts.
Appeal to authority fallacy. Sit down, bud. Pal.
You mean like Ian? I don't think he appoints himself an expert in anything.
Who's that other dude who thinks he's an expert on Churchill?
Oh, Daryl Cooper does not think he's
Daryl!
an expert.
No, in fact, I think it's everybody else is always calling him an expert, and he's like, I'm just a history
Have you
nerd."
ever absorbed any of his material? Have you ever consumed any of his podcasts or anything like
I
that?
tried.
Yeah?
It's pretty hard to listen to somebody who says, I don't know what I'm talking about, but now I'm going to talk. Or I don't know about this. Or I'm not capable of debating this historian, but I'm going to just tell you what.
That's literally how I bought a house at the age of 23. You need to yap in.
Thing.
Yeah, but that's not
I think that's a
exactly
little
that's
bit
not
out of
exactly what
context.
Daryl was saying. I mean, Daryl's point of view.
All I do is spread misinformation on the internet.
However you feel about this, what Daryl is saying is he doesn't really like doing debates. He likes to do long format stuff where he can really explain his
But
position.
if you throw a lot of shit out there, there's some point at which I'm just raising questions is not a valid thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just asking questions. No, I'm just asking questions, bro. It's a permanent defense. It's impenetrable. Dude, hold on. I'm just literally asking questions.
You're not raising questions. You're not
Yes, I
asking
am.
questions.
I
You're
am.
telling people something.
Do you think Daryl's doing that?
I think there's a
God forbid a motherfucker ponder on his orb.
whole bunch of guys doing that.
I think
Dave is doing that, very obviously. Dave's a comedian, but he's now mainly talking about Israel.
No, I don't know if I'm mainly
no.
talking about Israel.
That's
but
all I see you
I have
on the internet
opinions.
doing.
Yeah, but that's you
Well, that
just
might be what you've seen,
It's
but
just
I don't
you
think that's.
So
consuming
that is,
clips.
but that is also your shtick now, isn't it?
Well, what do you?
Bro. The only question I'm throwing at you after you say the word shtick is a question mark kick to the domicile, brother. Well, that's your shtick, isn't it? The smarm, the contempt, the sip of the tea. You already know that's tea, not coffee. That's crazy.
you mean by that's my shtick?
Well, you're not a geopolitics guy in general, are you?
I don't even know exactly what you're asking.
I'm saying you've decided, being a comedian, you've decided now to become somebody who talks about Israel and the conflict.
I think you're incorrect. I don't think it's a decision. I just think you have long-form conversations, multiple of them. It's a huge event that's in the news, so it comes
That's
up.
a British maxed T cell.
I don't think
know,
it's a
but-
thing. I think if you're on the outside, you'd say, oh, look, they're trying to get attention by talking about this very polarizing issue
Yeah.
publicly. That's
But
not...
you do get attention from that. If you'd spent the last year speaking about Myanmar, you would not be on my lips.
Yeah, but
or a
he
lot of other
does
people's.
talk about Yemen constantly. He talks about a lot of things that aren't in the news.
Well, I
constantly.
tend to talk about the conflicts.
I am an expert in every single Middle Eastern country as well as global conflict, all at once.
That my government is directly involved in, which I think is reasonable to me. But I don't quite get, like, what's all the appeal to authority stuff? I mean, what you have to be an expert, or
no,
and
I think
what exactly
authority
makes
matters.
you
I
an
think
expert?
authority matters, and I think that if you just throw a lot of shit out there and then say I'm not interested in the alternative views on this, and particularly when it's a counter narrative that is wildly off. And when you get people, look, I just feel we should get it out straight away. I feel you've opened the door to quite a lot of people who've now got a big platform, who have been.
Listen, I don't think you're solving this crisis anytime soon. Two ethnocentric religions who think that that promised sand is theirs, given to them by God. Hello?
Throwing out counter-historical stuff of a very dangerous.
Let's rewind the clocks back to around 1200, okay? Kingdom of Jerusalem, Baldwin IV. That's all I'm saying.
Kind.
You mean Daryl? Are you talking about Daryl?
Daryl, who's the other one?
I don't think Daryl has...
Derek.
I don't think there's anything dangerous
what's
about
the
what
other guy? Derek. What's his name? Cooper, is it? Which one is it?
No, that's
No, that's Daryl
Cooper.
Daryl
Cooper.
Cooper. Who's the other one? There was one I just checked on the way here. Daryl Cooper, and then yeah, Daryl Cooper.
Dude, I don't care. I don't care whose it is. I just don't want my tax dollars glassing children.
Ian Carroll. Look, these guys are not historians. They're not
Enemy AC 130 above.
knowledgeable about
Oh,
anything.
no one's calling Ian Carroll a
No, but
historian,
then why
even-
listen to their views on Churchill?
Daryl is
Why
incredibly
listen-
knowledgeable.
It's not.
It's just
he's not.
Yeah,
he's
he
not.
Is.
He's
Why do you say
wildly. Several reasons. One is when he was offered to debate the current greatest
Debating is gay.
living biographer of Churchill, he said, I can't, because he knows much more than me, and I admire his work and I've learned from it, but I can't possibly debate him. That's Andrew Roberts.
Right, but you don't have to be able to debate people to have opinions.
No,
on
you
things.
don't have to debate people.
If
But
it's not your thing.
But if you, for instance, well, okay, but if you say, I've decided that Churchill is the bad guy in
It's not
World
what he
War
said.
II.
It's not what he said. It's not what he said.
Neither Carroll nor Cooper have said that.
Well, listen, I don't know what Carroll said, but Daryl Cooper's not said that. What he said was he jokes with his friend Jocko, who's an
Jocko Willink? Good.
Anglo-Saxon. He jokes with him. You know, I think that Churchill was the secret villain of World War
It's 4:30 a.m. Time to gargle piss. Bowl of cereal. No milk.
II. And what he's saying is, by Churchill's actions, the war escalated. He's not saying anything.
He's not just asking questions, then, is he?
No, but
he's got a
the
point of
claim
view.
isn't that he's just asking questions. Yeah, he has a point of view.
You can explain this better. He literally says
yes, he
he's
said
joking.
in the comment, he goes, listen, I'm being hyperbolic. And then he once again disclaimed, he goes, and I'm not claiming Churchill committed the most atrocities or was the worst part. But in many ways, I do view him as the chief villain, as my hyperbolic, provocative statement. But
He was just being hyperbolic. It's not that serious.
But what's
Douglas,
the point of that?
well, okay, but Pat Buchanan wrote an entire book on this. Is he not allowed? Is he not an expert? Is he not allowed to be
He's
interviewed?
certainly not an expert. He can be interviewed. I've watched Pat Buchanan debate. I watched Pat Buchanan debate against Churchill historians, and he was absolutely leveled because he doesn't know what he's
Absolutely leveled in it.
talking about.
When did Pat Buchanan debate and get
It was
leveled?
about 20 years ago.
I'm just
He
curious. I
debated
haven't seen
against
this.
Andrew Roberts and several other historians at Intelligence Squared in London. I was there. He didn't know what he was talking about. He had a contrary view, and it was interesting and stimulating to hear.
Let's get into the highlight. Enough of this petty bullshit. I want to see haymakers being thrown.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
And I think that people have been indoctrinated by very bad actors into this, and as a result have excused atrocities or will make excuses for them, make excuses for the people who do them. I think, in addition, it plays to some of the darkest things of the regional mind as well as the international mind. The aims of Hamas, their stated aims, include the annihilation of the Jewish people. And October the 7th, they had their best go at doing that.
Is bro spitting? Is bro cooking? Hold on. Let Douglas marinate for a second. Hamas, terrorist organization, launched an attack on October 7th. Sprayed and prayed a bunch of festival goers. Took hostages and flew in on lawnmowers. I'm just saying. It's not a good look. It's not a good look when you elect a terrorist group.
And the fact that in a decision between whether or not you're on the side of the people who want to dance and live in peace with their neighbors, or whether you're on the side of the people who want to rampage through a dance party bar in the early morning, macheteing at people.
I think that's an oversimplification, but continue.
I find it amazing that there are so many people who don't know which side they're on. But there are a lot of them. There are a lot of reasons for that. But one of the foremost reasons is the fact that the state of Israel has been uniquely libeled, has been uniquely lied about. Its history has been uniquely lied about. It has been uniquely put under an international spotlight.
I mean, I have some questions, mister. The USS Liberty, the Balfour Agreement, the Pollock Affair. What are we talking about here? What are we talking about? You want to go PSYOP for PSYOP? Let's dig into Mossad a bit.
And then misrepresented in a way which I cannot think of many other countries in the world that have been treated that way. And there are deep reasons for it and shallow reasons for it. The deep reasons include some of the most ancient bigotries of the human heart, and the shallow reasons are people who don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Okay, I think that
Let's unpack that.
look, I'm not going to speak for what every person out there believes. I don't exactly agree with like the characterization that there was no outpouring of like.
I mean, it just so happens that Israel's surrounded by Muslim countries and they all hate Jews. That is also correct. There's a eternal blood feud going on.
Feeling after October 7th, and certainly like everybody I know was just like, oh my god, this is like a horrific atrocity, and like what an unprecedented terrorist attack from Hamas, the worst terrorist attack in Israeli history against Israelis, and it was horrible. I think what a lot of I'm not arguing that there are no people who are actually pro-Hamas, or there are no people who are actually like hate.
When was Israel created? 1948? Post-World War II?
Jews or something like that. I do think that what happens is that a lot of people get put in that category who do not belong there. Much like we've seen this over the last year and a half, where a lot of people, you have John Podhoretz calling Thomas Massie anti-Semitic scum. Because
I do think the word anti-Semitic has been hijacked and is used to obfuscate potential truths.
As he said, we're dead broke. We can't afford to fund everybody else's war here. People have been calling Tucker Carlson anti-Semitic all over the place. When these are two guys, Thomas Massie
Who's calling me anti-Semitic? Certainly not you. Maybe it's Douglas Murray.
And Tucker Carlson, who have never uttered the words "the Jews" in their life. Like they're just not anti-Semites at all. So there's a lot of people, I think, who are when they're critical of the Israeli.
I mean, as a right-wing grifter who gets called a fascist on a daily basis, what are you gonna do?
Government's response to this get lumped in as pro-Hamas. I will certainly say that's certainly not my position. I think your description of them, death cult, by the way, the same term that Daryl Cooper used to describe Hamas, I think is an accurate one. And it was horrible. But I think that I think that your characterization, first of all, of that they
That's wild. Sucka da pee-pee from BB once a week?
Gave the Palestinians a state in 2005 is just wrong. I just think that is not at all an accurate way to describe the disengagement, which we could get into more.
Anytime somebody says pee-pee, you're just going to get a laugh from me.
Or if you want to. But first of all, I would just point out that if the two-state solution was achieved, I assume you're arguing it was taken away after that. You're not still arguing that the Palestinians have a state, or are you saying they have had a state since 2005?
They were given a state in the Gaza.
And when was it taken away?
Well, they kind of screwed it up for themselves on the 7th of October.
So you're saying from 2005 all the way till October 7th, there was a two-state solution. It had been achieved.
Well, it was another state, yeah.
Oh, okay, but that would be two states then.
No, it was another state. It was different from the PA.
Okay, right, but I'm saying a Palestinian state.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's interesting about that is that this is not how any of the leaders really describe it. I mean, when Netanyahu himself is not claiming that they had already achieved a two-state solution, why are you talking about this? What happened in 2005 in the disengagement was that essentially Israel went from occupying the place.
Why is America in the Middle East? George Washington talks about this. Farewell Address, 1796. Beware of foreign alliances. I'm just saying.
To surrounding the place. And they've had it under a brutal blockade.
Philion, don't you understand? Oil? Oil is the answer to everything.
Since 2007. And yes, you were right that it was...
Why do you... I don't agree the blockade was brutal by any means.
You don't think the blockade of Gaza was brutal?
I mean, how brutal do you think the Egyptians are?
Pretty brutal. Yeah.
They allowed stuff in.
Okay, I mean, since some stuff has gotten in, yes, that's true.
More than some stuff.
Okay.
More than some stuff.
Okay, I'll say this, right, because there's been different levels of...
Why doesn't Egypt take Palestinian refugees? Why doesn't a single Muslim country take them? Can somebody answer that question, please?
Blockade, even before 2007, going back. I know in 1996... they had like a pretty strong blockade that year. According to the World Bank, it contracted 40% of the GDP of Gaza. So just for reference, the Great Depression was a 30% contraction. This was in 1996 for 1 year.
It's their land. They don't want to leave. If I see an F-22 Raptor above, I'm running as far and as fast as I possibly can. Any sense of it's my land, I don't want to leave, goes out the window when I see the bazaar getting turned to dust.
They gave them something worse than our Great Depression. That was just
The reality is these countries say, turn around, go home. You're not welcome here.
year. From 2007 on, there's been a blockade of that country. You don't think that's kept the country poor?
Why do you think there's a blockade of any kind?
Why is there a blockade? Well, I mean, the argument from Israel would be...
No, why do you think?
I would say, okay, I think that the disengagement, I think Smotrich was correct when he said that, I'm sorry, my mistake there. I think which another quote that I'm sure you're familiar with, but Dov Weissklaff, who was the senior advisor to Sharon, who was the prime minister at the time.
Watch Real Life Lore to understand why most Arab countries can't take refugees. Can you just explain it to me? I have yet to get a good argument.
He essentially said the reason we're doing the disengagement, the reason we're doing this is so that we can put the peace process in formaldehyde. This is the reason we're doing it.
You're not answering my question. You're continuing to cite
I'm getting
very
there.
right-wing Israeli politicians. But what do you think is the reason?
I'm getting there. I'm saying, so I think they disengaged in order to kill the peace process. I think they put the full blockade around the country for the reason that they've always kind of done it there, that, yeah, they don't want too much stuff getting in. They want to keep them, as they put it, on a diet, and they don't want rockets to fly into Israel.
The second one is a kind of important one, isn't it? The final
Yeah,
one you said.
it is.
Do I have a college education? No, I dropped out of high school.
If the Palestinian leadership in Gaza after 2005 had not from...
There are different types of Muslims that have different views of the Quran, so that's why they can't take Palestinian refugees, because their interpretations of the Quran, whether or not the lineage follows Muhammad or Muhammad's cousin. How old was Aisha? Nobody's asking these questions.
From the get-go, decided to use Gaza as a stockpiling place for rockets to fire into Israel, all of it would be different.
In a nutshell, they are too poor and will destabilize most of them. Oh, so just send them to Europe. And as a matter of fact, just send them to New York. As a matter of fact, we have plenty of room.
If they had just resisted the temptation that so many of us do in our lives to stop keeping RPGs in our cellars and then Katyusha rockets in our children's bedrooms, all of it could have been different. If that desire to live in peace beside your neighbors had superseded the desire to stockpile rockets, it would all be different.
Yeah, or if
And
Israel
what
just
you
hadn't
describe
occupied
as-
them for 60 years, it would all be different too.
They
I mean,
weren't
why is it the onus
occupying-
always
they
on
weren't
them?
Well, you believe in self-determination, I'm sure. Yes.
I believe in individual rights. Yeah, sure.
Okay, individual rights. And that includes the right to make bad decisions.
Sure.
Yes. The Palestinians in Gaza, when they voted in Hamas, made a very bad decision.
Yeah, of course,
and
Douglas.
In the
but
years,
but,
hang on.
Yes.
Hang on. And in the years
Hold your horses, pal.
after that, they made bad decision after bad decision. It was a very bad decision to continually fire thousands of rockets into Israel. It was a very bad decision.
So Israel's got the Iron Dome, right? I'm just trying to get some Iron Dome, you know what I'm saying? It's a defensive missile system provided by the U.S. What's the deal here? For years on end, they were just launching missiles into Israel?
To use what boats came in early on and to use the smuggling networks from Egypt, not to bring in supplies you could actually build a thriving society with, but...
Why am I wearing sunglasses indoors? These are not sunglasses. These are soy blockers because I'm on a communist platform known as Twitch.tv. And I'm a based giga-chad. Some might call me a chud, so I have to be careful around here.
to bring in rockets. It was a very bad idea. No, there was not starvation in Gaza after 2005. No, there was no deficit of goods coming in. I've been plenty of times.
There was no deficit?
No, there are plenty
No goods were kept out?
There are plenty. How many? Have you been to the crossing points?
No.
When were you last there at all?
I've never been.
You've never been?
So, this is interesting. Douglas Murray is about to assert that how are you going to talk about any conflict if you haven't been there yourself? And I see both sides of the argument. I don't necessarily have to get on a plane to the Middle East to give you my opinion on the Houthis in Yemen. I can do that from the comfort of my Herman Miller chair. But on the flip side of the equation, Douglas Murray kind of has a point. If you're going to be taken seriously, you would want your due diligence. Douglas Murray's been there. He was on the ground. He saw it with his own eyes. Let's see where this goes.
Well, am I not allowed to talk about it now? Have you ever been to Nazi Germany? Are you allowed to have feelings about them?
You can't time travel, but you can.
Well, right.
But you can travel.
Okay, but so what? So what's the point? Like,
No,
okay.
I find that
This is known as empiricism. Science requires experience. And some might say politics are science. I majored in political science at Third Eye Global.
Lots of people have been there and agree with me, and lots of people have been there and agree with you.
Yeah, but
so I
if
don't
you're
know
going
what
to
the...
spend a year and a half talking about a place, you should at least do the courtesy of visiting it.
all right.
Oh no, I watched the video Bangladesh. I don't think I want to go there to experience it. I'm just saying.
I just think this is a non-argument.
You don't
but
think?
Okay. No, I think it's a non-argument.
But if you're an expert,
Well, you have to go and touch the ground. To
no,
be
I
able
think
talk
you have
about
to
it?
see. I think it's a good idea to see stuff, particularly if you
okay.
spend a career talking about something. Yes. I have a journalistic rule of trying never to talk about a country even in passing unless I've at least been there.
If Douglas Murray wants to get more points on the board here, he should put this in terms to Joe Rogan that he understands. Joe, you're a fight announcer. You travel the world watching these UFC fights. Would you say that you have a better finger on the pulse when it comes to calling fights than most? Yeah? Why's that, Joe? Because you're watching the fights live as they unfold. You're talking to fighters. That's all he had to do. That's all he had to do.
Okay.
It's
but that's
sort of
not
normal. It's a normal thing to do. You're talking about.
It's a normal thing to do if you're an actual journalist, but since we're living in a slop world, you can just say shit into a Shure SM7B and people take it seriously.
Hang on, you're talking about crossing points. And not only have you never been to a crossing point in either Egypt or in Israel, but you've never even been to the region.
Okay. Again, I think this is a non-argument. I don't understand.
No, it's not a non-argument.
Yeah, it is.
It's not a non-argument if you're insisting that you're an expert of some kind, or not claiming you're an expert, but still talking about it, about the provisions going into Gaza or not, if you've never seen any of this going on.
So you're not
That's
allowed to
amazing
speak
to
about
me.
things that you've read about. You can only speak about things that you've seen with your own eyes.
You can talk about what you want, as you're proving. But that is a different matter from...
The problem is, what he does with what he has seen there is a little one-sided view. I totally get that. I mean, I think he's probably being paid by somebody to go on this book tour. He just released a new book. Trump tweeted about it on X and on Truth Social. It seems a bit astroturfed. And look, I'm just the guy who wants to call out the psyops.
From spending an awfully long amount of time.
The two comedians got scolded with tea. This isn't a non-argument. It's completely valid. English, posh, Chad, mogging. I see both sides. I really do. Call me a fence-sitter. Call me a dirty centrist like Big Dick Bill Maher.
Talking about an issue in a region you haven't even had the courtesy to visit whilst developing all of these views about it.
I mean, this is what I call bedroom journalism. It's a problem that I see on YouTube a lot. You can make any video look pretty with some fancy editing, some free royalty music from, like, you know, your favorite fucking epidemic sound. It's not hard. But actually going there and experiencing things and documenting, it's a different ballgame. It's in fact, it's a whole different league. It requires a lot more of the self. Now, I would like to see somebody who's also been there with a contrary view to Douglas Murray.
I mean, now I slightly get an idea of where you're coming from. You've read about this blockade, and so you imagine that that's what it is. I imagine you've read all the people who say that Gaza was a concentration camp.
Why would he visit a war zone? Listen, I hear you. I'm not the one hopping on those planes, but he is.
And you probably think that too. Am I right?
I mean, again, literally a concentration camp. It shares a lot of similarities, I would think.
Wow. Well, as I say, you can't time travel
Let's go
back to the
back to
Nazi
the
era.
Let's
but
go
you
back to
could
the
go
blockade.
to the Middle
Okay.
East and actually visit it.
Okay,
It's
the
not
World
hard to
World
do.
Bank said in 1996 for the
Now
one
the
year of the
libertarians
blockade.
are quoting the World Bank. I love it.
It doesn't mean anything. This is a non-argument. Yes, I'm saying the World Bank did their own analysis of this, and they said that
Why
it was a
don't
40%
you do
of
your
the,
own analysis?
Hold on. You
Jesus
got to
Christ.
stop in.
'Cause I'm a comedian. I write jokes for a living. Well, then why are you weighing in on Israel Gaza?
interrupting and let him finish
I
the
will.
sentence.
The
Fire
World
away.
Bank said that 40% drop in the GDP of 1 year due to the blockade. And there's been a blockade from 2007 on. So are you saying that this hasn't had an economic effect? Is that the argument?
No, of course it'll have an economic effect.
So you're saying
But-
you have to be on the ground and do an audit of the blockade
No,
in order to be able to
I
comment
think
on
you
it?
should at least know what it is, what the territory is, what the situation is in the region. Yes.
Personally, I saw pictures on Twitter of seed oils being airdropped into Gaza, cooking fuel. But in my head, it's another psyop. It's machine oil lubricant. It's fortified canola oil.
Yes, absolutely.
And the only
Absolutely.
way to do that is to be there in person.
I think that's the best way. It's not the only way, but it's the best way, for sure. For sure.
I mean, yeah, I can't argue against that. If you want to get to the truth, you have to be boots on the ground. That is the single best way. However, it is not the only way. And I think you are entitled to your opinion based on information that you read and filtering through various sources and coming to your own conclusions.
If you have never seen the countries in question, you've never spoken to the people in question, you've never interviewed anyone, you've never gone around, you've never seen the terrain, and so on, and you've used Wikipedia, I'm sorry, no, that's not the same thing.
Okay, well, I've not just used Wikipedia, but didn't you write a big piece when the war in Ukraine first came out titled something like, I've been to Ukraine and they can win, they can repel the Russians? So you could go there and still get it wrong, right?
No, I was with the Ukrainian armed forces in 2022 when they were retaking territory from the Russians.
Right, the last time they had it.
Dude, I should stop watching Joe Rogan because I've never been to the studio. Listen, I get the logic on both sides.
Any advances, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
I said I can see how they can win, which would be advances like that, yeah.
You
Sure.
said if we just fund them, or if we just arm
I
them,
didn't
that
say
they can then
I said,
they can
I
repel
said
it.
that the Ukrainian army was making great successes, which it was when I was with them in the fall of 22.
Okay, listen, there were lots of
But-
people who went to Iraq and said we'll be greeted as liberators and
I
it'll
know,
be paid
but-
for in oil and democracy will spread through the region. So I don't know. Either take on the arguments or don't. But I don't
But
think
I'm saying,
like.
but your argument's incorrect.
Oh, okay, fine. Well, then present a counter argument to it. But to just tell me I'm not allowed to talk about something
I'm
because
not
I'm not an
saying
expert.
you're not allowed to
okay,
talk
fine. Well,
about
you're
it.
not
I've
an
said
expert, so
repeatedly,
you shouldn't
you're
talk
talking
about
about
it.
it
You
now.
haven't been there. Yeah, I know. But you keep playing this game where it's like the whole opening to this podcast was like the non-experts talking about this is such a problem. Now you're saying because I
don't
haven't been
think-
there, I can't talk about it. Is there a blockade?
I need to stop chatting. I'm not a streamer, so I have no room to get involved. That's right. There should be 0 chats. I think you're entitled to anything that you want to think. I'm just saying Douglas Murray doesn't have a non-point. He's kind of got a little bit of a point.
There that's causing economic devastation or not? According to
of
the
all-
World Bank, there is.
First
I'm an expert in not being involved, but I'm not involved.
of all, I don't think it's a game. I don't think it's a game at all.
Me neither.
I'm not playing a game. Okay?
Okay, but this is semantics.
No, but this is important. I've seen plenty of this up close. I've seen plenty of this with my own eyes because I do believe that one of the things you should do if you're talking about something is to see it.
Yeah, you've established
Okay,
that. Is
but
there a
that's-
blockade?
Joe just doesn't give a fuck.
The blockade that existed, to the extent it existed, was a blockade to try to make sure that the Israelis and the Egyptians knew what materials were going in and out of Gaza after the first rocket fires when Hamas, in fact, before Hamas was elected. The Israelis and the Egyptians didn't do a very good job of it, were meant to be trying to make sure that the materials that went into Gaza were not materials that could be used to build up the Gaza and Hamas war machine. The reason why trucks get searched is not because the Israelis want to search through grain or flour. It's
I feel like I'm getting psyoped from all angles, so I don't know who to believe.
because they wanted to stop the truck.
Chat, I can't think for myself. Tell me what to think. Thinking's hard.
Trucks containing the arms and the munitions that the
I don't believe either of you.
Gaza and Hamas and Islamic Jihad fighters were going to use to fire against Israel. And I'm sorry, it just makes the most obvious strategic sense. As the late great Joan Rivers once said, if as an appeal to authority.
That one I'll allow. That one I like.
She also said that Michelle Obama's a man.
Yeah, I know, she did that.
No, I'm saying she
That
got
seems to
everything
be
right.
perennial.
So continue. Go ahead.
But as Joan Rivers said, if New York was being rocketed from New Jersey, we would level New Jersey.
That's a fact. That's actually a fact. Now that he puts it into a New Yorker terms, I fucking spitting. If New Jersey could try, New York would blow them off the map. It's my people. Fucking bada bing. Dude, this guy's not even American. He can't have an opinion.
I don't think you need to level it, by the way. But you would at least try to make sure that rockets weren't being imported in larger quantities into New Jersey.
Of course.
Okay, that's all the Israelis were doing.
Is that so? All I know is New York takes the dub over New Jersey any day of the week. Dude, Douglas Murray is stuck on the Rockets. He's bouncing on them, doing tricks on it. I don't know what to think. I think I need to watch Hassan Piker talk about it, and then Asmongold, so I can form my own opinion.